My topic that I'm talking about today is getting kids interested in politics, and I've subtitled it Shining a 21st Century Light on a 19th Century System. By that I mean I want to look at some of the fundamental challenges we all face in trying to get young people interested in politics. And, I know there's a lot of names for the students, the generation that you have right now, whether they're the millennials, the Facebook generation, Generation Text is something I heard a couple of weeks ago. What it gets at is that younger people today have a fundamentally different outlook and approach to using technology than I'm sure we were used to when we were growing up, that I was growing up with. What they expect to be able to do with that technology is different from what we expect we do with it, and what they expect in return for using that technology, I think, is different. Back in 2004, Tony Blair was running for re-election in the British election there. And like Canada, in Great Britain, they're quite worried about their turnout amongst young voters. I think it's even less than what it is in Canada. So some of his advisors said, hey, here's a great idea. Kids today, they like to text. Why don't you make an availability where people can text you questions? So what they did is they set aside an hour and they gave out the number that people can text your question to the Prime Minister. I don't know about you, but if I was a young person trying to find out a bit about the Prime Minister, where things stood and where he stood on some really complex issues, I would think of this whole exercise as a bit of a colossal waste of my time. Worse than that, I really think it speaks to technological pandering. Trying to find a quick and easy way to reach young voters. Now, what's wrong with this is I think the Prime Minister's office, despite their good intentions to reach out, to try to reach young people, fundamentally misjudged the technology that they were using to do so. You can see the pitch, hey, Prime Minister, texting's cool, let's try to do that. I think it's backfiring on them. Why isn't this going to work? Well, when it comes down to it, politics is slow. It is very deliberate, and it deals with very complex issues. These are not the kind of things that translate into a texting conversation. Texting, as you know, is very quick. It's very intimate. It's ideal for setting up with your friends to see what showing of Twilight you want to go see on the weekend, not to discuss a major complex issue involving the future of your country and the free world as you know it. Worse than that, I think in doing this, it doesn't show a real policy change on the part of the Prime Minister. He's saying, hey, we're going to try something new, and then we're never going to try it again. For the sake of, let's say, a publicity stunt during the election campaign, let's do this. I worry that this is going to end up making voters more cynical about politics in general, rather than opening their eyes to saying, hey, they get things. So when we teach young people about politics and political involvement, I think it's useful to realize this takes place on a spectrum of activities. Voting is just one way young people can express themselves. It's not the only way. It's sort of near the middle. I'll put voting. It is a very involved activity. You do have to learn and find out where you stand on something, do a bit of research. Most importantly, you have to put on some clothes and get out of the house in the morning and go down to a community center and actually take the time to get involved. Writing a letter, when I came in, I heard one of the teachers talking about how writing letters to the editor is a really useful activity for her students to get it as well. It's also part of being engaged in politics, sharing that opinion for how you think that the planet should be run. Meeting your representative, slightly more involved perhaps than getting out and vote, but it does take something to put on the coat coming down and say to someone, hey, I have an opinion and let's talk about this.